The train threw him onto the platform like an old suitcase. The asphalt underfoot shimmered with heat waves, and James muttered under his breath as he squeezed through the crowded station, his backpack digging into his shoulder. 2 weeks of holiday. 2 weeks only. And where was he? Right back home in the sleepy town of Ashford, Kent, where even the pigeons knew everyone's business. In '98, his mother had greeted him like he'd returned from war. The usual fuss. Hugs, shoving bags into his hands, her face glowing like she'd swallowed a light bulb. James was glad to be home, of course, but the travel fatigue weighed heavy on him. All he wanted was a hot shower and a decent meal. But Mum didn't waste time. "Darling, I've got news," she said, eyes sparkling mischievously. James rolled his eyes. Her news was always special. Last time it had been about Mrs. Parker's missing pig again. "I need grandkids," she'd sighed. "My knees aren't what they used to be." "So what now?" "Well, my friend's just come back from a, let's say, less than pleasant holiday," she said as casually as if she'd been talking about the weather. James choked on his tea. A friend in prison? Those words didn't mix in his head. "Oh, you remember Olivia, don't you? The auburn-haired one with green eyes? She even popped round for New Year's about 10 years ago." James had no memory of it but nodded anyway, curiosity pricking at him. Not every day did Mum's friends return from a strict regime resort. The house smelled of rich beef stew and freshly baked pies. Mum bustled about the kitchen while James sat staring at the clock, his mind spinning. Why mention Olivia at all? Mum usually filtered what she told him. That meant soon enough, he'd meet her, and meet her he did later that evening. After a quick shower and changing into worn sports shorts and a faded tee, the doorbell rang. Mum fluttered to answer it like it was Christmas morning. Standing on the threshold was a woman about 40, slender and tall, with a face carved by time, each wrinkle telling a story. Her eyes were feline, sharp and unyielding, as if she'd seen the world's worst and found it wanting. "This is Olivia." Mum introduced her. They shook hands. Olivia's grip was firm, dry, nothing like the soft touch of a lady's hand, more like a worker's. Yet her fingers were long and neat, and her smile carried a hint of something daring. A spark of untamed spirit. "Oh, you're the son?" she asked, sizing him up with unnerving intensity. "Yeah," James replied, trying not to stare. But he wanted to. Despite the life she'd clearly lived, there was a wild feminine strength about her. Something you didn't just write off. They sat down, Mum laid out the food, and the usual chatter began. James mostly listened as Olivia's low, smoky laughter filled the room. She spun tales that made Mum hiss, "Olivia, children are here." James smirked inwardly. He wasn't a child anymore, but it was nice to see Mum forget that for a while. As the wine Mum mysteriously fetched loosened tongues, Olivia spoke of the difficulty of stepping back into the world after that life, but without pity, more with irony. "People think everyone goes feral in there," she said, "but you know who really goes wild? The ones scared of themselves." James nodded, not fully understanding, but he caught something deeper. Olivia wasn't just here by chance. And judging by the way her eyes lingered on him, he was part of whatever game she was playing. By bedtime, Mum had retreated to binge-watch her favorite soaps, leaving James and Olivia alone in the kitchen. She lit a cigarette, despite Mum's hatred of the habit. "You haven't been around much, have you?" she asked, exhaling smoke. "About a year," James admitted. "Yeah, you notice things differently when you're only home for a bit." He smiled. She said things that sounded simple but stuck like burrs in his mind. It felt as if he'd stepped not just into his home but into some game, where the rules had to be learned on the fly. Outside, the dawn in Ashford broke as only small towns know how. Cock-a-doodle-doos from the neighbor's yard, fresh-cut grass scent in the air, and Mum clattering about the kitchen by 6 like she was feeding an army. James lay on the sofa, eyes half closed, thoughts tangled. Olivia's face haunted him. She seemed to have scanned him inside out, found all his weaknesses, and yet there was something about her. An undeniable force. Tea breakfast. Mum practically announced Olivia's arrival as a blessing. "She's come to help out around the house," she said, golden hands, fiery temper. James nodded, feigning indifference but secretly intrigued. What would Olivia stir up today? Around 10, a knock on the door. James opened it himself. There she was, jeans, a simple white vest, hair tied back in a messy ponytail, no makeup. Yet she looked delicious. Not just her figure, but the way she carried herself, like the whole block owed her money. "Hello again," she said, stepping inside. "Come in," James muttered. She passed by, and he caught a whiff of her perfume mingled with tobacco, a grown-up scent, not sweet candy but something bittersweet that made his head spin. Mum immediately set her to work, sorting potatoes, fixing a shelf, various chores. James lounged on his phone but soon noticed Olivia's efficiency. She worked fast and sharp with no wasted words, yet threw out jokes like a seasoned pro. "Blokes these days are lazy," she smirked when he was sprawled on the sofa. "We call it rest." He replied, "Rest's only when you've got something worth tiring for." Touché. He got up to help, not wanting to look useless. When Mum left to visit a neighbor, silence fell. Olivia sat at the table, peeling vegetables, then looked up. "So what are you after in life?" She asked a simple question that knocked him sideways. "I dunno. Just living, I guess. Work, home, holidays." She studied him like a book he thought was closed. "And you?" he asked back. "I found and lost my own. Now I just want to feel." That last word hung in the air like a dare. James swallowed, looked away, but inside his thoughts spun. What was she leading him toward? Later, Mum was out, and Olivia scribbled in a notebook. She glanced up. "You're a grown man, right?" "Yeah. So? You still look like a boy." He laughed. "That's bad." "No, it's honest. But with those eyes, people get under your skin real quick." She said it calmly, but something inside him twitched. He realized joking wasn't an option with her. She spoke truths. Outside, the sun beat down, kids yelling in the yard. Olivia lit another cigarette, and when she looked at him, a heat not from the sun flooded his chest. "You probably think I'm some old-fashioned woman," she said. "And you?" "I think life's too short to justify yourself." Her words hit again, sharp as a dart. For the first time, James wanted to just be with her, even if only for a moment, because there was something real in her, something he hadn't felt in years. The evening settled over Ashford with a gentle hush, but inside the small flat, the atmosphere was anything but quiet. Mum was bustling about the kitchen again, chopping vegetables with practiced ease, her floral apron tied tightly around her waist. She hummed softly, the familiar domestic soundtrack that usually made James feel anchored. But tonight there was a charge in the air, an unspoken tension that wrapped around him like a velvet cloak. Olivia sat at the worn wooden table, her posture poised yet relaxed. She wore a dark green dress that hugged her slender frame in all the right places, the fabric shimmering slightly under the kitchen light. Her legs crossed with deliberate grace, bare feet tapping gently on the scuffed floor. A delicate silver bracelet glinted around her wrist, catching the light with every subtle movement. There was an effortless sensuality in the way she carried herself, the kind that whispered stories without uttering a word. Mum poured wine into glasses with a theatrical flourish, breaking the silence. "So Olivia, tell us, how was your holiday?" she teased, eyes twinkling with both curiosity and a hint of mischief. Olivia smiled, a slow, knowing curve of her lips. "Oh, just the usual, cold nights, dull days, and the occasional existential crisis." James nearly choked on his drink. The casual way she described it made it sound like a weekend retreat rather than a prison sentence. Yet, behind those emerald eyes, he glimpsed shadows deeper than any night. Mum pressed on, eager to coax more stories. Olivia leaned back, swirling her wine like a sommelier. "People think it's all doom and gloom in there. But really it's people stripped of their masks. You see who you really are when there's nowhere to hide." James felt a shiver run down his spine. The idea of being unmasked, exposed, was both terrifying and oddly magnetic. Olivia's gaze flicked to him, sharp and penetrating. "And you, James, what masks are you hiding behind?" He opened his mouth to answer, but the words caught in his throat. Before he could find a reply, Olivia's low chuckle filled the room. "Don't worry. I'm not here to judge. Just to remind you that sometimes the hardest person to face is yourself." As the night deepened, the laughter grew louder, stories spilled over, and the wine warmed their edges. Olivia's humor danced on the razor's edge of risque, prompting James to laugh more freely than he had in months. She told anecdotes about improbable friendships forged in unlikely places, moments of kindness in the darkest corners. When Mum excused herself to visit a neighbor, Olivia's expression softened. She said, lighting another cigarette, "I haven't sat up this late with a man in years." James looked up, surprised by the confession. The smoke curled around her like a silken veil as she continued. "There's something about being close, no pretenses, no games." Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, everything else faded away. "You won't find any fairy tales here," Olivia whispered, her voice low and steady. Just two people trying to feel alive. James felt the heat rise in his cheeks. The moment thickened, charged with possibility. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from outside. A car door slamming shut, jolting them back to reality. Olivia smirked. Afraid Mum will catch us. He shrugged, heart pounding. She leaned in, the scent of tobacco and something darker enveloping him. Don't worry, she murmured. I'm not scared anymore. As she settled beside him, crossing her legs again, James realized this was just the beginning. A dangerous dance on a knife edge, where every step could ignite a fire or shatter everything, and somewhere in the back of his mind, a question whispered. How far was he willing to go before the mask finally slipped away? Outside, the night deepened and the quiet town of Ashford held its breath. The next morning dawned gray and misty over Ashford, the kind of day that made the world feel heavy and slow. James woke before the alarm, a dull ache pulsing at the back of his skull, not from last night's wine, but from the restless storm still raging inside him. He lay tangled in the soft folds of the worn quilt, staring at the ceiling as memories of Olivia's smoky eyes and daring smile flickered behind his eyelids. Downstairs, the faint clatter of dishes and the soft murmur of Mum's voice drifted up. James rolled over, reaching for his phone but quickly abandoned it. His mind was already racing too fast, replaying the night's electric moments like a film reel stuck on repeat. The front door creaked open, and a sudden voice called from the hallway. Alive and kicking, huh? Olivia stepped into the room, her hair tousled from sleep, strands falling loose around her face. She wore faded jeans and a loose gray sweatshirt that slipped off one shoulder, revealing the delicate curve of her collarbone. Barefoot, she moved with a confident ease, like someone who owned every inch of the space she inhabited. James sat up, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. Morning, he muttered. She grinned, a slow, mischievous smile. Counting on a miracle? Or just trying to avoid facing the day? He laughed, the sound rusty but genuine. Maybe a bit of both. They shared a silence, the kind that feels less empty and more filled with things unsaid. Downstairs, Mum's voice called again. Breakfast's on. Don't keep it waiting. Olivia stretched, arching her back just enough to make the sweatshirt slip further, teasing bare skin beneath. James swallowed hard, suddenly very aware of the small, intimate distance between them and the kitchen. The warm aroma of frying bacon and brewing coffee wrapped around them like a familiar blanket. Mum was busy at the stove, humming to herself, her floral apron now dusted with flour. She glanced over her shoulder, smiling briefly at Olivia, then gave James a look that was too knowing for comfort. As they ate, Olivia's stories wove through the room again. Tales of hardship, hope, and the strange camaraderie born in confinement. But beneath the surface, James caught the flicker of something raw and vulnerable in her gaze later. When Mum stepped out to visit a neighbor, Olivia turned to James, her eyes locking onto his with an intensity that made his heart stutter. You're different since last night, she said softly. Like you're waking up from a long sleep. He hesitated, then nodded. Maybe I am. She reached across the table, her fingers brushing his wrist. A simple touch but electric. Life's messy, she whispered, but sometimes the chaos is where you find yourself. James looked into her eyes and saw not just a woman with scars, but a fire that refused to be extinguished. Just as the moment deepened, the sharp buzz of the phone shattered the bubble. James glanced at the screen. Mum's name flashing urgently. He stood, tension knotting his shoulders. Olivia's smile faded, a shadow crossing her face. Looks like the calm won't last, she murmured. Outside, the mist thickened, swallowing the quiet streets and the secrets they held. And somewhere beneath the surface, a storm was gathering. One that would change everything. The afternoon sun struggled through the heavy clouds, casting a pale, washed-out light over Ashford's quiet streets. Inside the flat, the mood had shifted. James sat at the kitchen table, fingers drumming nervously on the wood, while Olivia moved about with an easy confidence that belied the tension humming between them. She wore a loose, cream-colored blouse that slipped tantalizingly off one shoulder, paired with dark skinny jeans that clung to her long legs. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a messy bun, strands escaping to frame her sharp cheekbones and those piercing green eyes that seemed to see right through him. A delicate silver chain glinted at her collarbone, catching the light every time she moved. Mum was out, and the flat felt too big, too quiet, like a stage waiting for the next act to begin. Olivia broke the silence, lighting a cigarette with a practiced flick. The smoke curled around her like a dark halo. You know, she said, exhaling slowly, there's a game we're all playing here. Some just don't realize it yet. James frowned, leaning forward. What kind of game? She smiled, a slow, knowing curve of her lips. The kind where everyone's got secrets, and the stakes are higher than they seem. He swallowed, suddenly aware of how much he didn't know. About her, about his mother, about the fragile peace that had settled over this house. Olivia's gaze softened for a moment, and she tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear. You ever wonder why people come back changed? Most think it's the walls that do it. But it's the silence that gets you, the kind that presses so hard you can't breathe. James nodded slowly, the weight of her words sinking in. She stepped closer, the faint scent of tobacco and something darker, maybe jasmine or musk, wrapping around him. And you, she whispered, what are you running from? Before he could answer, the front door swung open, and Mum's voice called out, bright and unaware. I'm back. What's all this smoke? Olivia flicked her cigarette into the ashtray and turned, her smile razor-sharp. Just keeping things interesting. James laughed, tension breaking slightly, but the undercurrent remained. There was a dangerous edge to Olivia, like a storm barely contained that night. As the house settled into uneasy quiet, James found himself unable to sleep. He wandered into the kitchen, where Olivia sat by the window, the streetlight casting a soft glow over her face. She looked up as he approached, eyes gleaming. Can't sleep? Something like that, he admitted. She patted the seat beside her, and he sat down, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her. Tell me, James, she said, voice low, what's the one thing you've never told anyone? The question hung between them, heavy and urgent. That he hesitated, then shook his head. Maybe I'm still trying to figure it out. She smiled, a touch of sadness in her eyes. That's the hardest part, finding yourself in the silence. They sat together in the dark, the night thick with unspoken truths and possibilities. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the window pane like a warning, and somewhere, deep beneath the surface, the game was about to change. The following morning, a brittle chill hung in the air as James stepped out onto the narrow street of Ashford. The town was just beginning to stir, shop fronts peeling open like sleepy eyes, the faint scent of fresh bread wafting from the bakery down the lane. But James felt anything but fresh. His mind churned with the night's unanswered questions, and Olivia's words echoed like a challenge he wasn't sure he was ready to accept. Back inside the flat, Olivia moved with a quiet purpose. Today she wore a fitted black leather jacket over a soft white blouse, paired with faded blue jeans that hugged her hips just so. Her boots clicked confidently against the wooden floor as she paced, the silver chain at her neck catching the morning light, a subtle reminder of the woman beneath the surface. James watched her from the doorway, the tension between them taut and electric. Coffee? She offered, raising an eyebrow. He nodded, stepping inside. The kitchen filled with the rich aroma of brewing coffee, mingling with the faint musk of Olivia's perfume. A complex scent, both intoxicating and grounding. As they sat down, Olivia's gaze locked onto his. You're avoiding something, she said softly. What is it? James hesitated, then admitted, I don't know who I am anymore. Or who I'm supposed to be. She smiled, a knowing, almost seductive curve of her lips. That's the point. You're not meant to have all the answers. Her words stirred something deep inside him, an ember flickering to life. Suddenly, the front door clicked open and Mum entered, carrying a basket of groceries. She paused, eyes narrowing slightly as she took in the charged atmosphere. Everything all right here? She asked, voice light but with an edge. Olivia's smile didn't waver. Better than ever. Mum set the basket down, shooting James a glance that felt like a silent warning. Later that day, James found himself wandering the streets alone, the weight of the past and present pressing down. He stopped outside the old community center, a place where he and Olivia had once crossed paths long ago, though he hadn't realized it until now. A memory surfaced. Olivia, younger, fierce-eyed, defiant against a world that tried to break her. The realization unsettled him. This wasn't just a chance encounter. It was a collision of histories. Back at the flat, Olivia awaited his return, standing by the window in a loose silk blouse, the soft fabric hinting at the curves beneath. Her eyes met his as he entered, and without a word, she closed the distance between them. Her lips brushed his ear. Ready to stop running? James swallowed hard, the question a spark igniting a fire long smoldering. He nodded, voice barely a whisper. I think I am. In that moment, the fragile walls they'd both built began to crumble, and the dangerous dance between them took an unexpected turn outside. The sky darkened, clouds gathering like a silent audience to the storm about to break, and somewhere in the shadows, a secret waited, one that could shatter everything. That evening the flat was bathed in the soft glow of amber light, casting long shadows that danced across the faded wallpaper. James stood by the window watching the rain begin to patter against the glass, each drop a tiny percussion on the quiet street below. The scent of damp earth mixed with the faint trace of Olivia's perfume lingered in the air, intoxicating and impossible to shake. Olivia moved through the room with deliberate grace, her black silk blouse slipping just enough to reveal the curve of her shoulder, the delicate line of her neck. Her dark jeans hugged her hips, and the faintest trace of a smile played at her lips, as if she held secrets the world wasn't ready for. She approached James silently, the soft click of her heels on the wooden floor barely audible. When she reached him, she slipped her fingers around his wrist, pulling him gently away from the window. "Stop looking out," she whispered, voice low and sultry. "The storm's coming, and it's not just outside." James turned, eyes searching hers, feeling the heat of her touch ignite a fire beneath his skin. "What do you want from me, Olivia?" he asked, voice rough with tension. She smiled, a slow, dangerous curve. "I want you to stop hiding. To feel everything you've been too scared to face." Before he could respond, the sharp ring of the front doorbell sliced through the room, breaking the spell. Olivia's eyes darkened, and she released his wrist with a sigh. "Looks like the past wants to join the party," she murmured. James opened the door to find a man standing there, tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes sharp as a hawk's and a face carved from stone. The stranger's presence filled the hallway like a thunderclap. "Olivia," the man said, voice cold and clipped. "We need to talk." Olivia's smile vanished. She stepped forward, meeting the man's gaze without flinching. "Not here, Mark," she replied evenly. "Not tonight." Mark's eyes flicked to James, then back to Olivia. "This isn't a request." The tension in the room snapped taut, and James felt the air thicken with unspoken threats. Olivia turned back to James, her voice barely above a whisper. "Stay out of this. It's not your fight." But James shook his head, determination hardening his features. "I'm already in it." Mark's gaze sharpened, and for a moment, the three stood locked in a silent battle of wills. Then Olivia stepped closer to James, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. "You don't know what you're stepping into." James met her eyes steadily. "Maybe. But I'm not walking away." Outside, the rain intensified, drumming against the windows like a warning drumbeat. And in the shadows beyond the street lamps' glow, unseen eyes watched, waiting for the moment to strike. The game was no longer just between them, it was a storm gathering on all sides, and no one would leave unscathed. The air inside the flat grew thick, almost suffocating, as the rain hammered relentlessly against the windows. James stood rooted near the doorway, heart pounding in his chest like a drumbeat racing toward an inevitable clash. Olivia's eyes, sharp and unyielding, met Mark's with a fierce intensity that crackled between them like live wires. Mark's jaw tightened. "You made promises, Olivia. Promises you can't keep forever." She stepped forward, her voice cold and steady. "I keep my own terms." James watched, caught between the past and present, as the weight of old debts and dangerous secrets pressed down on them all. Suddenly, Olivia's hand shot out, gripping James's arm with surprising strength. "You need to leave. Now." But James shook his head, voice firm. "No. I'm not running. Not anymore." Mark's eyes flicked to James, a flicker of respect, or was it warning? Crossing his stern features before the tension could snap into violence, the front door swung open wider, and Mum appeared, her face pale but determined. "What's going on here?" she demanded, stepping between the three like a shield. Olivia's gaze softened for a heartbeat. "Mum, it's complicated." Mum's eyes landed on James, then Mark. "I don't care how complicated. This stops now." The room seemed to hold its breath. Mark gave Olivia one last look, then nodded slowly. "This isn't over." With that, he turned and disappeared into the stormy night. Olivia exhaled, the fight draining from her posture. She turned to James, brushing a damp strand of hair from his forehead. "Are you sure you want to keep playing?" she asked, voice low and vulnerable. James met her gaze without hesitation. "I'm done hiding. Whatever comes next, I'm in." Mum sighed, her tough exterior cracking just a little. "You two better be careful. This town doesn't forgive easily." As the rain eased outside, a distant siren wailed. A haunting reminder that some secrets refuse to stay buried. And in the silence that followed, James realized this was only the beginning of a storm that would change everything. Night had fallen over Ashford, the street lights casting pools of golden light on the slick cobblestones. Inside the flat, a tense quiet had settled, broken only by the soft ticking of the old clock on the wall and the occasional crackle from the fireplace. James sat on the worn leather sofa, fingers entwined tightly, eyes fixed on the flickering flames. Olivia stood nearby, her silhouette outlined by the firelight. She wore a deep burgundy dress that clung to her slender frame, the fabric whispering against her skin as she moved. The neckline dipped just enough to hint at the curve of her collarbone, and her bare feet traced slow circles on the polished floor. There was a subtle confidence in her posture, a silent challenge that seemed to fill the room. James swallowed hard, the weight of the evening pressing down on him. "So what now?" he finally asked, voice low. Olivia turned, her green eyes gleaming with a mixture of defiance and something softer. "Now we prepare. Whatever Mark wants, it's not just about me anymore." She crossed the room and dropped onto the sofa beside him, their shoulders brushing. The contact sent a jolt through him, electric and unexpected. "Why me?" James whispered. She smiled, a slow, enigmatic curve. "Because you're not afraid. And because you're already part of this, whether you like it or not." He looked away, heart pounding. The line between danger and desire blurred in the flickering light. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the window panes like a restless spirit. Somewhere in the dark, shadows shifted, silent watchers waiting for the moment to strike. Olivia's voice softened. "There's more to Ashford than you know. Secrets buried deep. And if we want to survive, we have to dig them up." James met her gaze, determination settling over him like armor. "Then let's start digging." A sudden knock at the door shattered the fragile calm. Both jumped slightly, eyes locking. "Who is it?" James called, voice steady despite the tension. A muffled reply came. "It's me. Thought you could use a friend." Olivia's lips curved into a sly smile. "Looks like the game's about to get even more interesting." As James opened the door, a figure stepped inside. Someone from the past, someone who knew too much. And with that, the shadows in Ashford deepened, pulling them all further into a dangerous mystery none of them could escape. The night held its breath, waiting for the next move. The newcomer stepped into the dimly lit flat, the soft click of her boots against the wooden floor echoing through the room. Emma, James's childhood friend, stood framed in the doorway, her sharp blue eyes scanning the tense scene. She wore a fitted leather jacket over a simple black top, her dark hair pulled back into a sleek ponytail that revealed a delicate silver earring glinting like a secret. "Didn't expect to find you mixed up in all this," Emma said, voice laced with both concern and curiosity as she glanced between James and Olivia. James forced a tight smile. "Neither did I." Olivia studied Emma for a moment, then nodded. "You're just in time. Things are about to get complicated." Emma stepped fully inside, closing the door behind her with a soft thud. "Complicated's putting it mildly. Mark's not the only one watching Ashford." James felt a chill creep down his spine. "Who else?" Emma's gaze darkened. "People with long memories and even longer grudges. And they don't like outsiders stirring the past." Olivia's fingers tightened around James's arm. "We'll have to be careful. Trust no one." James looked between the two women, the fierce protector and the mysterious outsider, and felt the weight of the storm closing in. "Then we stick together," he said firmly. "No more running." Emma smiled, a flash of old camaraderie lighting her face. "About time." As the rain began to fall again, tapping a restless rhythm on the windows, the three of them gathered around the worn kitchen table, plotting their next move. But outside, unseen eyes glinted in the dark, and the quiet streets of Ashford held their secrets tight, waiting for the moment to unravel the fragile alliance. The night was far from over, and the game had only just begun. The kitchen table was cluttered with maps, scribbled notes, and half-empty cups of coffee, their warm steam mingling with the chill creeping through the room. James leaned forward, tracing a finger along the faded streets of Ashford, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. Emma tapped a finger on the table. "Mark's been stirring up old ghosts. There's talk of secrets buried beneath this town. Things some would kill to keep hidden." Olivia's gaze was steely. "We need to find out what he's after before it's too late." James felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "And what if it involves my family?" Emma exchanged a look with Olivia. "Then it's personal." The three fell into a tense silence, the weight of unspoken histories pressing down. Outside, the rain intensified, drumming against the windows like a warning. Suddenly, the power flickered and died, plunging the room into darkness. For a heartbeat, there was only the sound of their breathing. Then, from the shadows beyond the doorway, a voice cut through the black. "You're meddling in things you don't understand." James's heart leapt. A figure stepped into the faint glow of streetlight filtering through the window, a stranger with eyes as cold as steel. "Who?" Before he could finish, the stranger smiled thinly. "Call me Carter. And I'm here to remind you that some secrets come with a price." Olivia stood, her body tense and ready. "We're not afraid." Carter's smile widened. "You should be." The storm outside raged louder, thunder booming like a battle in that charged moment. James realized the line between friend and foe had blurred, and the game had become deadly serious. The night held its breath, and so did they.